hey, why don't they teach this in school? And how could I have gotten to, almost the age of 50 and really not discovered
Good afternoon, this is Jason Bailey. Today I have a special guest. His name is Albert Pellissier from Baton Rouge, Louisiana. He is a real estate investor for how many years now, Albert?
20.
20.
Yeah.
20 years, wow. And then also you are, more importantly, the founder and creator of Man Camp. And that is why we brought Albert on the show today to talk about Man Camp and what he's doing with this movement. So Albert, could you tell us a little bit more about Man Camp and what is it and ultimately what inspired you to get this going?
Yeah, sure, Jason, thanks. It really came out of the beginnings of a speaking career, and I wanted to do some professional speaking. And I realized that I couldn't really say what I needed to say in 45 minutes or an hour that I normally got. And I thought, well, how could I really share the information that I had learned with people who really needed it? And I was like, what if I took them on a weekend and we spent the entire weekend together? So I started off just bringing 3 guys. We rented a camp on a lake, and we went out there, and I brought all my content with me, and that was the inaugural Man Camp, and it went so well, I just kept doing it.
Awesome, awesome. And you said all the content. Now, I know you're a very avid or a very, I guess you would say, very astute student of personal development. Could you tell us a little bit more about your background in personal development, the events, top 3 events that you've been to in your life?
So you can just go ahead and say it. I'm a self-help junkie. And,
okay.
And pretty much always have been. I didn't think about this until recently, but when I was a teenager, my parents became Amway distributors, and in the background were, they were listening to these Zig Ziglar tapes and Jim Rohn, and I don't know, maybe that was the original seed to it all. But I found there are really 2 groups of people who believe that you can listen and learn and change your life, and then some people who are like, that's a bunch of BS and it doesn't work. But I don't know, something in me has always believed that you really could listen to people like that who were sharing wisdom and tips, and that you could actually just dramatically change your life. So I think that seed was planted back, when I was a teenager.
Sure.
And I probably was always somewhat interested in it. But really, when I really dove in was about 8 years ago at the age of 48. And, even though I was doing pretty well, I was unfulfilled. I realized that the work I was doing was meaningless. And I decided that, hey, if this isn't it, what is the secret? What's the missing ingredient? If success and achievement don't really do it for me, and I'm guessing for other people either, what is the secret? And
sure.
I really decided in that moment that I was going to dedicate myself to figuring out what was the answer to enjoying your life more, beyond achievement and success.
Yeah.
Looking for that fulfillment,
More fulfillment.
Fulfillment and more meaning while you're doing whatever you're doing.
Sure.
And so I essentially disconnected from the world, turned off my cell phone, and I really decided I was going to dive in and just read. I probably read 50 books in maybe a 3 or 4 month period. And here was the takeaway. By the time I got to book number 50, and read book 51, it seemed like they were all saying the exact same thing. They were just repeating themselves. And then I'm wondering, hey, why don't they teach this in school? And how could I have gotten to, almost the age of 50 and really not discovered the content, that was in these books? And I wanted to share it. I just felt compelled to share it. So, it started with I would read something and I say, people need to know this, and I would just send out a text message to a few friends. And then those friends said, man, I could really use this, every day. And I said, oh, okay, well, I'll just send you one every day because I'm in here reading anyway.
Yeah,
Might as well share it. And it was just this idea of wanting to share wisdom that's been recorded. Look, some of it, Jason, was written down, over 2,000 years ago. Some of it was 100 years ago. Some of it was 10 years ago, and some of it was last year. And essentially, the message was pretty similar, which, if I had to boil it down, it was along the lines of accept responsibility, for your life, be deliberate, and take charge, and also stop looking to the external world for your happiness and fulfillment, that you needed to make the changes inside.
Sure.
And if you could make those internal changes, then the outside world would change as a result.
And that's your first point was take responsibility, and the one looking to the external world is directly correlated, because I know that I personally have, tried to escape responsibility and was heavily into looking to the external world for validation. And, I didn't find it there, but I was running a kind of a loop, a non-stop, kind of like on a hamster wheel of running myself crazy, thinking that I could find it, but it was just a habit of doing the same thing over and over again and not discovering it.
It doesn't work. So
It
most
work.
people do feel like if I move the chess pieces around on the chessboard in the right way, then everything's going to come to me. I'm going to be happy. Life is great.
Right.
Well, at some point, I'll say at some point, if you're fortunate that, it doesn't work for you and you realize this is not ever going to work. And so, look, at that stage in my life, I knew I had two choices. I could either keep the same strategy I had and delude myself, well, if I just make another $5,000 a month or something, then all my problems would go away and everything would be easy. That's choice A. Or to say, you know what, if I follow that path, this is the same path I've been following up to this point, the same strategy. It's not working now at 48. If I keep on this road, then I'll be 58. Maybe I'll have the $5,000 a month, but now I'll be 10 years older, and I know it's not the answer. So the trick was, how do you change, the software that's running inside? And that just led to, so many discoveries of both what I was going through, and then I started running into my peers, and I realized they were really in the same exact situation. And I wanted to help them. I said, hey, look, I know you're not going to take 4 months off of work and go sit down and read the 50 books that I read. If you did, you could probably get to the same point. But what if we just got together and I share with you the
highlight reel?
Yeah, just the important points. Like what I've discovered was the easiest, simplest, quickest things that you could do to make the most change, the fastest.
Right. And, and I wanted to touch on it again, but you said you've been a self-help junkie or a, personal, a very, avid learner of personal development. So tell me, what was one of your top experiences as far as, seminar, events, retreats, etc.? I would like to know.
Well, on some level, I really didn't do a lot of experiential things. The bulk of my path has been with books. However, I did run into a guy who asked me if I'd ever heard of Tony Robbins. And, the Tony Robbins book, a tape course that I had done back in the late 90s, which is what got me into the real estate business, and I did his 30-day Personal Power 2 course. And so, I committed to that. I did the 30 days. I started that in April of '99. You know, by that December, I had signed my first purchase agreement on some rental property, and that launched that whole, you know, aspect of my life. So I was always grateful to Tony Robbins. And when this gentleman suggested, had I ever seen him in person, I said, you know, no, I actually haven't, and I should make the effort. I left that meeting with the guy. His name is Jack Fontana, and I went and I booked my ticket to San Jose and went to a Tony Robbins event, and I walked on the hot coals, and it was a 4-day deal. And you know, there was something in there. You know, one of his little secrets to success was, if there's somebody out there who does what you do, that you want to do, to go and find a way to beg, borrow, steal, whatever, and get that person to be your mentor. And I jotted down in my book the name of a lady I had met, you know, that previous summer. Her name was Michelle Villalobos, and she was doing these retreats for women. And I didn't follow up with her or anything, but I said, okay, well, here it is. Tony Robbins just said, go find a mentor who's doing what you want to do. When I came home from the Tony Robbins event, believe it or not, I came home, maybe it was on a Wednesday, and my email 2 days later said, hey, this is Michelle. Sorry I given you such late notice, but I have a couple of seats left at my retreat. You had asked about coming and being a fly on the wall, and it's in Miami, you know, basically in about 4 or 5 days. And so I had to go back to my wife and say, okay, honey, I know you're going to think I'm crazy. So, you know, I just got back from Tony Robbins on Wednesday. Here I'm telling you, you know, on Thursday or Friday that I got to go to Miami next week. Right. But I went to that.
From the West Coast to the East Coast, honey.
I went back to that first retreat, and she essentially just showed me how to run a retreat in the most effective way. And so probably those two things. You know, one was big. There was 11,000 people in that stadium in San Jose. Right. And then the next thing you know, I'm in this, essentially, which was a women's retreat. I was the only guy there, and there was maybe 25 women. But both of those events were really powerful and led to the direct creation. You know, when I left that retreat in Miami, she made me commit to doing my first one within 90 days.
Oh, wow. That's awesome.
Yeah, and now I said to her at the time, look, I have no website. I don't have a following, really. Like, who's going to come to this thing?
She said it didn't matter, right?
She said, don't worry about that. Just put it on the calendar. And I put it on the calendar, and, you know, sure enough, 3 people were at that first event, and that was the beginning. And we're about to do the 10th one next month. Awesome,
man. Well, I want to thank you again, Albert. I appreciate it. And we thank you for watching. Once again, Albert Pellissier, a founder of Man Camp.
Yeah.
And could you tell us how to find you?
So look, you can look mancamp.net. Will take you to a super secret page on the back end of my website that just talks about the retreats.
Right.
AlbertPellissier.com, and I'm sure no one can spell that. So just sneak in the back door, mancamp.net, and there'll be ways on there to get in touch if you want to discover more.
Awesome. Well, thanks again, and thank y'all.
Thanks a lot.